Welcome to a ride on the outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Hey, Patrick, thank you for joining me once again.
Hello, Tom. How are we?
I'm doing great. Unfortunately, it seems like Zain was a little under the weather coming back home from Arizona in the Final Four. So, once again, on Tom Albano, Pat Danna. Producer Pat is going to be joining me on a little bit of a short notice. But you know what? UFC fighters, they tend to take fights on short notice. And so too will Pat. And so, Pat, here we are.
Here we are, Tom.
Has finally arrived. The UFC 300. I mean, for me as a combat sports fan, it's like I have two Christmases in a row. I just had WrestleMania, and now I'm getting UFC 300. It is a fantastic time to be working for TKO.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, it was the first time I had watched WWE in a bit, and WrestleMania was awesome, man. I really did enjoy WrestleMania. And moving right along from that, we get UFC 300, biggest event potentially of all time. I mean, I guess we'll see, but there's a lot going on.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it, but on paper,
Yeah.
it looks like one of the greatest cards that we're ever going to see in our lifetime. It's stacked from bottom to top. Some of the names on those early prelims, and you're like, they're fighting on early prelims. Well, it's because it's such a milestone pay-per-view. All right, before we get into anything, though, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Make sure to follow us across social media, Facebook, Twitter, aka X, and Instagram at MMA Outsiders ETB. Do the same for the Empty the Bench Network itself, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. I believe there's little speculation going around that MMA Outsiders might be the next one to get a TikTok. So stay tuned for that. Make sure, though, to go to our YouTube home, youtube.com/ETB Network. We're climbing up the subscriber count. We're in the 720s, I believe, last time I checked. Help us keep that climb going. And if you don't want to take MMA, and if you don't want to watch the video feed, or if you want to take MMA Outsiders on the road with you, you can do so on your favorite audio-only platform, Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so much more. Joining me here on the show is producer Pat Danna, Combat Sports UK journalist. Make sure to follow him at Pat Danna MMA, on Tom Albano, contributor for MMA News, Fansided MMA, and with the PFL on their website for every event. So, yeah, it's going to be a busy weekend for me because we've got PFL Las Vegas on Friday night, and then Saturday night is UFC 300. And all the fallout and craziness that's going to come from both of those cards. So it's going to be a long and grueling one. But it's going to be a fun one as well. So make sure to follow me on social media at Thomas J. Albano, and I'll have all the different reports for you over the course of this weekend. Also a big one. It's something that we need to have a little discussion about. This is now the first episode of the MMA Outsiders with Playack, the Empty the Bench Podcast Network's new sponsor. So again, the MMA Outsiders is presented by Playack. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playack is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playack makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And Pat, the big one, why this is even a crazier time here at the Empty the Bench Network, and the reason we're at 3 Eastern now, we're premiering, noon Eastern if you're listening on the audio side of things, because make sure to join us tonight for our first live stream as the Bulls travel to the Motor City to take on the Pistons at 7 p.m. Eastern, and the Knicks travel to Beantown to take on the Celtics at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. That's right. Empty the Bench, our premier live stream on Playack. We're going to have Bulls, Pistons, and Knicks, Celtics. I'll be there. Nick Morgeson will be there. Ben Cruz from Hitting for the Cycle will be there. Hopefully, Zan will be there if healthy enough. Obviously, we got a very big weekend ahead of us, but hopefully he will be there. He is a massive Bulls fan, and the Bulls are kind of trying to get things going. When it comes to I mean, they're pretty much going to play in the play-in tournament. So, and then of course the Knicks are fighting to make sure they don't fall to the play-in tournament. So should be fun on that side of things. So big thank you to Playback. Like I mentioned on ETV Sports, they are phenomenal people. Getting to meet them behind the scenes and getting to see all that we can do with our platform is so much fun. So I'd say on behalf of everyone here at the End of the Bench Network, we're really happy to be partnered with Playback now.
And you get to see me and Tom on Playback on April 23rd when we do an NFL Draft Classic throwback stream.
Yeah. I mean, of all things, that's to peel back the curtain a little bit. We're trying to get all these different streams together for our first month to really promote the fact that we're Playback. And one of the things that I had the idea of doing is, well, since we have such a big quarterback class for this NFL draft, then a couple of days before, we should have a look at some of the best, worst picks for quarterbacks. Who was drafted too high? Who was drafted too low? Who was a solid pickup? Who lived up to their potential? Who was what's his name? Jamarcus Russell, that big bust
Yeah.
from Oakland in 2007. I'll have a little talk about him. So we'll do all that. And who joins me for this? Who signs up to join me for this? But Pat and Zan. So yes, the MMA Outsiders are going to do football for one stream.
Yeah. Same crew, different sport. Check us out on April 23rd.
I can't wait.
I can't either.
Let's get into this episode. Speaking of can't wait, because we have a lot of news that we got to get to before we get to UFC 300. One of them, however, does involve a lot of hullabaloo around UFC 300, not in terms of what's happening in the cage, but outside of it, or what's happening in the cage in the future. All right, let's be clear. We have talked about that. We would believe it when we see it's finally happening. But Dana White, just last week, goes to social media, takes a photo of Conor McGregor. I think it's a screenshot of a video Conor posted to his own social media. And the caption is just soon. ... What
could that mean?
I wonder what that could mean. Well, if you don't know what that means, if you lack the literacy skills of the internet, then MMA Uncensored kind of did you a little favor. And MMA Uncensored, this is a little bit of breaking news. It breaks the day that we are actually recording this. They are reporting that an announcement will be made at the UFC 300 pre-fight press conference, which actually takes place tonight, I believe, as we're going to be ready for the Playback stream. So there is speculation that either at the press conference that happens tonight or during the UFC 300 pay-per-view broadcast itself on Saturday, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler will finally be announced, and most likely for International Fight Week at UFC 303. It's about damn time!
You couldn't have said it better, Tom. Seriously. I mean, thank God they're finally announcing it. I get that they waited, I guess to the time when everyone's got their eyes on the UFC. Everyone's going to be watching the press conference and stuff. But man, I feel like this could have been its own announcement separately from everything else because of how big it is. It would have pulled numbers, pulled everyone's attention when Conor McGregor makes his return to the octagon. So I don't think they needed to do it during UFC 300 week, but I guess it works out for everyone.
Yeah, it does actually work out for everybody, but at the same time, it's just been all this frustration, Pat. I mean, I think Zan kind of worded it best a couple of weeks ago. Tough 32 is going to be premiering, and technically Tough 31 won't be finished yet.
Yeah, that is crazy to think about for sure, because I mean, we've been waiting for so long for this that we're already on a new Tough season. I mean, it's a damn TV show, and we're already on the new season of it before the old one can really wrap up. So I'm just happy that it finally seems like this fight will actually happen now. But like you had said, I won't believe it until I see him in the cage across from each other.
I mean, it's just something absolutely unreal how long it has taken and all the hullabaloo going back to when they were first announced as coaches in February of 2023. Then the show happens, and then we go 292, no fight in Boston. 295, no fight at the Garden. Actually, you can include Abu Dhabi there too. 294, no fight in Abu Dhabi. 296, no fight in Vegas. UFC 300. Those reports came out from Ariel Helwani on New Year's when McGregor made his little video about fighting Chandler at middleweight. Al Helwani put out the his version of the Woj bomb, saying, "Well, the two fighters wanted 300, but Endeavor, or as they're now TKO, basically was like, no, save you for a different card that could use it." And I mean, look, I think this was, as much as my care for this fight has lessened over the course of the 1 year or so it's been. I'm still relieved. I think relieved is the word. I'm glad that this fight is actually going to happen. And considering the story that we're going to be talking about next, involving another certain infamous UFC fighter, it feels like this was the absolute last chance, and this fight needed to headline 303. It needs to headline International Fight Week, because what else are you going to have? We'll talk about Jon Jones in a second, but it seems pretty clear that Jones, Stipe, they really want to do that at the Garden like they planned last year. So they're willing to wait. You're not going to have Aspinall fight. You're not going to have Aspinall, when the opportunity is there for him to headline Manchester, they're going to take it. And if it's not him, it's going to be Leon, because they're the two British champions. You've got two champions fighting on this upcoming card at 300. You have such limited options. It goes back to what we talked about with Sydney in 293. Well, Zain and I talked about with Sydney in 293 and the UFC scheduling. They really shoot themselves in the foot sometimes when it comes
Constantly.
to scheduling. I mean,
Constantly.
look. I'm all for the flyweights headlining cards, but we already see all the talk about, Pantoja and Urseg are going to have to headline a pay-per-view. The good of it, and I've talked about the good of it, Pantoja is Brazilian. He's fighting in his home country, so maybe there's good reason for that. And then you've got whatever the heck is going to happen with 302. We still don't have, we're still rumors. We're still yet to have, as of at least 8 p.m. Eastern on April 10th, we still don't know what the fight is going to be. The main event, we're a month and a half away from that card in Newark.
And tickets go on pre-sale soon, so they're gonna need to be able to
This
announce
weekend,
that. Yeah,
actually.
exactly.
So we need a main event.
So
So-
my thought for that is they're definitely waiting. I mean, Armand said it at the press conference. They're definitely waiting on that Armand Charles fight to happen. See if the winner can bounce back in June, and if they can't, I think they're just going to end up giving it to Poirier. But I think first dibs will go to the winner of Charles and Armand.
I'll save this later for the 300 talk, both here and for the pre-show, which, by the way, I'll give more details about the pre-show in just a second. Well, I should say a little bit. I want to get through all the UFC 300 talk first. But basically, yeah, and it's frustrating. I mean, technically, we don't have a UFC 303 fight, and tickets have gone on sale for that card, because it's International Fight Week. And you considered. Oh, what I was gonna say was also just the lightweight title picture. I think there's multiple things that could happen, considering you don't just have Oliveira versus Sarukian, you also have Gaethje versus Holloway, and as you mentioned, you have Poirier also waiting in the wings after his finish of Benoit Saint Denis. So there's a lot to play around with. You also have the fact, as I mentioned with Zain last week, everyone is, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people are against Bilal Muhammad getting a title shot, at least on the casual side, but it is in New Jersey. Even though Bilal Muhammad is a Chicago-born fighter, Zain likes to say he was raised here in the NYC. He was raised there. It's a hometown fight. If there's one pay-per-view location that makes sense for him to headline, it'd be that.
Yeah.
But there is also, like I said, if for some reason Aspinall can't fight in Manchester, then you need Leon to fight in Manchester. They've kind of screwed themselves a little bit here. And you got to pray that nothing comes out of, well, let's just go right into it. This. So a UFC drug tester. Of course, the UFC now partnering with Drug Free Sport International. They've been ever since the start of this year after the, let's say very public and very chaotic disassociation with USADA. So a drug tester goes to Jon Jones's to collect a sample, and technically I don't need to note, but I think it is prominent considering who we are talking about. It was a female drug tester, and she goes to Jon Jones's. Jones is intoxicated and basically threatened to kill her. Said basically he would kill her right then and there. Um, Jones, however, has countered with a statement later the day because a report does get filed. She does file it with police. Happens about a week or so afterwards. It should be noted after the incident. Jones puts out this statement saying the agent was unprofessional, that he was intoxicated only because he was celebrating a friend's birthday, was having a party, and then post. It looks like doorbell camera footage, like ring
camera footage. Yeah.
and it's the two of them basically walking out together. Jones saying everything was solved of a hug and a high five. What do you make of this, Pat? Because on one hand, the ring footage does show us the two walking out together like nothing, ever would come of it. At the same time, we know Jones's history with alcohol. We know the reason I bring up female. We know his history of domestic violence when the incident that happened with his fiance when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. What do you make of this? Do you believe Jones's rebuttal?
You know, I kind of want to, just because the video he released did show that they had a cordial parting afterwards. Doesn't mean that he didn't say what he said, but for some reason, a weird part of me, because if I remember correctly, she said that Jon said that like people that come into my house this early like can die or something like that, or like I could kill them or something like that. Is there a chance that he might have just been like joking around and like she doesn't get his sense of humor? Like, is there any possibility that that's the case here? Like, I don't know. The whole
I
situation
don't
just
know.
seems strange.
It does. And, I mentioned USADA. We're coming off, one of the complaints that UFC fighters had about USADA was that basically they would come in at strange times. They would be really interruptive. They would, they didn't have the patience for anything. It was like right then and there. And I get the reasoning for that because you want to test fighter. It's the definition of random. And we did see, was Jones the one who hid under the octagon in the
Yes.
Arizona training facility? So
Yes, he
we've
was.
seen Jones and some controversies with, I mean, obviously he's failed drug tests before, but even something like this. So, like you said, they walked out together, which was strange, and it just, it's strange that they're walking out together. Everything's so peaceful in the footage, but here she is filing a report saying Jones threatened to kill me, and here he is releasing a statement calling her the most unprofessional I've dealt with in my 20 years as a fighter. It
Yeah, I don't
feels
know.
like it feels like both of them are just trying to really dig it in on the other, and it's like it's not a good look for either party. Like I said, I want to believe Jones in this one, but I am always skeptical because of Jones's history. And I mean, think about it. We're at UFC 300. It was at the last milestone pay-per-view of UFC 200 where Jones fails a drug test and screws up the whole card 3 days before it happens.
Yep, pushed back his rematch with DC, and UFC 200 had to be headlined by Misha Tate and Amanda Nunes because the original headliner was taken off because of Jon Jones. So
And
he,
actually,
he always likes to stay in the news during these big cards.
I know. Actually, remember, Tate and Nunes wasn't even the original plan. The original plan was to do the Lesnar Hunt fight as the main
Yes.
event.
Yeah, no, wild times. And I mean, like we said, Jon Jones just can't help himself but make headlines right before some massive cards.
And it's unbelievable, man. I've never seen. I mean, we know fighters can sometimes be, not the most logical of people. Not have, the greatest sense of timing and such, but it's something with Jones, him and his history. And
Always.
I hate to say it, the reason I was very skeptical about the UFC scheduling is because I can't help but feel, what if something comes of this? What if, if Jones gets summoned, then Jones gets arrested or something? If you're the UFC, that puts you in a really bad spot. They can't afford to have Jones come out on the wrong end of this.
Yeah, no, and if he does, I mean, we could be looking at him getting stripped of his title and like maybe even forced into retirement at this point just because he wouldn't be able to fight until however long this problem lasts, potentially.
And the thing is, you've already got people saying, they don't want the Jones Stipe fight because they've got Tom Aspinall as the interim champion, and people want to see Aspinall taking on one of these two goats to
Yeah.
rightfully claim his status. So, because the reason I was so skeptical is, with the scheduling, hesitant with the scheduling, I should say, is because let's say something does happen to Jones within the next coming weeks. Do you go to Stipe and say, look, we don't know what Jones's future is. He screwed up again. Can you just, here's some extra money. Can you just fight Aspinall in Manchester for the undisputed title?
I feel like they definitely ask him, but I doubt he'd accept, honestly, because I don't think he has any interest in fighting again if it's not going to be like a legacy fight like Jon Jones. Like Jon Jones doesn't want to fight. Same thing. He's saying the same thing, that he doesn't want to fight unless it's a legacy fight like Stipe. So that's my only
Which
concern,
is,
would be that
which
Stipe doesn't care.
it's funny that you say that though, Pat, because meanwhile, the PFL Bellator card, here he is saying, "Oh, I'll take Aspinall out. I'll take Ngannou out. I'll take Stipe out. Like, I'll do all three fights in a row and I'll win all three of them."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what to believe with Jon Jones anymore. I don't know whether to believe what he says about fighting. I don't know whether to believe what he says about this. I I'm just gonna let things play out and just see how it goes, because I really just I don't know if I can trust Jon Jones anymore.
And honestly, because of that, that's why I kind of alluded, in our top topic. At this point, because of this Jones controversy, I don't think the UFC has any choice. They can't afford, if they're all in on Jones Stipe for the Garden, they can't afford to not have Conor Chandler headline International Fight Week. It
Mhm.
has to happen.
Yeah, they can't have any more hiccups in their plans. They just need everything to go to course at this point, and hopefully everything will play out well for them. But
Because then at the very least, you have this Leon Bilal fight, or I would say Leon Chimaev, but now Chimaev's going to be fighting Whitaker, and who knows what the hell his future is, either welterweight or middleweight. So Leon Bilal at this point is the safer bet. At least there you've got some flexibility. Hey, if another scheduling F up happens on our part, if we shoot ourselves in the foot again, or a fight or a title fight that we want falls out, well, here you go. If none of the lightweights are ready for June at Newark, here you go, Leon Bilal. If Aspinall doesn't get an opponent or isn't ready for Manchester in late July, here you go, Leon and Bilal, because at least you got the hometown crowds on both for one fighter in both cases.
yeah, definitely. Hopefully they just somehow work around it like they've been. Obviously, some imperfect mashups like Pantoja Urseg headlining 301, but they always find a way, and I feel like they'll continue to find a way if another hiccup or two happens along the way. So I trust the UFC to do their job.
As the old Drake and Josh song used to be called, I found a way. Well, they
Mhm.
they always do seem to find a way. They
Right?
make it work. All right. Just some other headlines before we get into the UFC 300 stuff. Endeavor has been sold. Yes, the UFC ownership group has been sold to a private equity firm. This caused a little rumblings for a little bit, thinking, does that mean that TKO, the UFC and the WWE, would they be taken off of the stock trading market? The answer, however, is no. The TKO brand itself, though owned by a private equity firm, pardon me, even though Endeavor, which spun the UFC WWE off into TKO, Endeavor being owned by a private equity firm, TKO itself will remain on the market as a publicly traded company.
Thankfully, because I know a lot of people were happy about the mix into the TKO and being able to put that on the stock market. So it's good that they're able to keep things what they work to get it at. But at the same time, I mean, it is a little not shady, but it is a little weird that, Endeavor sold part of their stock immediately right after they did all this work to get this done.
Yeah, and the TKO partnership has gone. I don't know. How do you feel? Because I feel like it's gone okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's been good. There hasn't been any notable changes, I feel like, to either company, at least that we can see yet. I feel like both of them have been separately ran
Yeah,
fine,
but
and like
I
everything's
think it's
good.
more about the crossover stuff.
Yeah.
Like Chandler's weird appearance on Raw, calling out McGregor live there.
The
Um,
Do you think
you
the MMA Hour stuff had anything to do with that? With Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley.
Oh, absolutely,
Right?
absolutely, that had something to do with it. Even though Dana White and Ariel Helwani hate one another's guts, or at least Dana hates Ariel's guts, for the sake of the brand, for the sake of TKO, put him on the show that gets all the eyeballs, all the attention. It was perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other day at the Yankees game, you've got Tom Aspinall, the interim heavyweight champion, there alongside Damian Priest, who won the world heavyweight title at WrestleMania.
I actually didn't even see that. That's really cool.
Yeah, a photo was posted of them at the Yankee game together.
Wow.
They knew Priest. I guess Priest was the big draw there because he is a Yankees fan. He is a New York native, and since his stable is the Judgment Day, they paired him up with Aaron Judge, of course. But Aspinall apparently was at the game, and the two got to run into each other and took a photo together.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, it's actually insanely sick. That's
why
I'm saying I love this partnership, and maybe it's because the UFC is such on a high kick right now, the WWE is such on a high kick right now that it's so perfect right now. They are the mainstream right now.
Yeah, anyone who bought TKO stock before WrestleMania and UFC 300, good job to you, because seriously, it's looking like it's going to be skyrocketing after these events.
Yeah, as the song goes, we're in the money. All right. Who's not in the money? I mean, she's got enough money that can last her lifetime, but Ronda Rousey. So, as part of her book, and Zain and I have talked about her book before, Rousey attacking the WWE culture, at least the WWE culture under Vince McMahon. And now here she is saying that apparently prior to her fight with Holly Holm at UFC 193, that she apparently had some sort of concussion. Trying to see if I can find the excerpt. Okay, MMA Weekly posted the excerpt. I was so done fighting after that loss to Holly Holm. Rousey said in an interview with Valeria Lipovetsky, I had so many concussions. I literally couldn't take a jab without getting a concussion at that point. I got to the point where I just neurologically wasn't fit to fight anymore. I'd given everything that I had until my body and mind started to fall apart. When I couldn't give anything anymore, they hated me for it. I felt like I had to come back for another fight because I felt like I owed it to the fans and everyone that believed in me. Maybe I needed to give them an example of overcoming adversity. It was to the point where the next fight, the first time I got touched, I was out on my feet. It was so hard because I'd never been faster, never been stronger, never had a better grasp of the game. I'd never been so much better than everybody else. Your brain doesn't callous. It doesn't heal back stronger after a break. It's just an inevitable decline. I just couldn't keep fighting at that level anymore. My mouth guard was bad. I came into the fight concussed from slipping down some stairs already after all these years of concussions. Then I had a terrible weight cut, which means you have less fluid in your brain to protect it. I was just trying to make it look like I wasn't hurt, but I wasn't there cognitively. I couldn't think as fast. I couldn't judge distance. And just when I won fight, everybody felt like, oh, she's a fraud. I don't think everyone felt she's a fraud. I don't think that way. And I think Ronda Rousey has, despite what some people might say ever since that loss, Rousey has a place in MMA history for a reason.
Yeah.
But all these different reasons saying, this and this and this.
My mouth guard, I fell down the stairs. Yeah.
This is all excuses. But here's my question. If this was all the case, how did she get past physicals? How did she get past doctors and officials? I understand it's Ronda Rousey, and maybe it's a case of if the UFC would do anything to ensure that one of their golden geese they fight. But at the same time, if you're saying, oh, terrible weight cut, concussion, slip down the stairs, you can't get away with something like that today. Today, that would be cue of pull out of this fight.
And that's the thing is, I saw someone on Twitter say this. If she got knocked out in one of the first few punches, okay, maybe it's a bit more believable. Not to say that she's lying, but maybe it's a bit more believable. You could understand it. She got outclassed for 6 minutes before getting knocked out.
Like
she was getting beat up that entire fight. It's not like she just randomly got knocked out and lost. She was getting outclassed and then got knocked out after clearly losing. So I don't know. I'm not saying she wasn't concussed, but it'd be a little bit different if you actually saw concussion-like symptoms. She looked fine and then just clearly lost that fight.
And as far as the return fight goes, I mean, maybe she was better than she had ever felt, but you were in the cage with Amanda Nunes. I'm not surprised that one punch was all it took. And it's not because of it's because Amanda Nunes had that power. And it probably still has that power. That one punch she could KO somebody.
Yeah, I'd like to more believe that the sport kind of just passed Rousey and that, the people in the sport evolutionized to be better than her at that point. I mean, she was on top for so long at that point, hadn't lost, and just she was the best women's fighter of all time by far at that point. And we see at some point those kind of people just get passed along by the newer generation coming up that's more hungry, just better than they are in certain aspects. And I think that was more what we saw with that. But, not to call Rousey a liar, but I just think that the evolution of MMA played a bigger factor than the actual concussions she had themselves.
For sure. I don't think I could have said it any better, Pat. Well put. All right. Cris Cyborg, an old rival of Ronda Rousey's, is going to be boxing again later this month. I think it's April 27th. So she's ready to fight in PFL, though, right?
I mean, she was posting the other day, PFL, give me a fight, I'm ready. So, I mean, I guess she wants to do both and have them both booked at the same time. I really don't get it. I don't understand how you're going to be boxing in 2.5 weeks and also be calling for a PFL fight at the same time.
But you know what? People want Francis Ngannou to do that as well. People want Jake Paul to do that as well.
Very true, very true. But I don't know. I just feel like Cyborg is she's everywhere at this point. You really just can't read her at this point. You don't know what she's going to do. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when she's going to call for a PFL fight, when she's going to say she's sticking to boxing, when
according to Pete Murray in his interview with Ariel Helwani, they're looking at like August for a PFL pay-per-view that she and Pacheco can fight.
Yeah, no, I mean, that'd be perfect. I mean, obviously her and Pacheco is the fight, especially with the fact that there's no women's featherweight division or anything anymore in the PFL. So Pacheco's kind of just sitting there waiting, just waiting for Cyborg to
fight. Both of them are.
Yeah, both of them are just sitting there waiting for one to fight the other, basically. So, I mean, that's definitely the fight. Just let's end it there. Like Pacheco versus Cyborg is the fight, especially with Kayla gone. But it's just a weird situation with Cyborg now, and I just really don't know. I don't know who to believe at this point, whether I believe her, whether I believe the PFL. I really don't know. I think the PFL might be shelving her for a bigger card, which is understandable if you ask me. But at the same time, like, I just don't understand the contact there. Like, the contact there seems horrible. They really have to do a better job managing her.
And I think I kind of see both points because when you're Cyborg, you want to be more active. But the PFL, like we said, the PFL structure is different from the UFC's, is different from Bellator's. And, they understand. You can maybe attack and say this is the PFL bias that's coming out of me, but they understand Cyborg's marketability. As one of the greatest fighters of the sport, I was just talking about recently, maybe she and Pacheco could headline one of the ESPN TV cards if it comes to, but that's not what they want. They want Cyborg, one of the GOATs of women's MMA, alongside, Amanda Nunes, who we brought up before. They are pay-per-view fighters.
Yeah.
They are fighters who, are that next level competition. So, this is a bit of the downside to things. For those two, for Cyborg Pacheco, for Renan Ferreira, especially as he's waiting for Francis Ngannou. But you hope that basically the payoff is going to be worth it because these guys and gals are going to be basically the marketable stars for the PFL. Meanwhile, other ones continue to be built up with the PFL regular season or with Bellator. I mean, with Bellator, you've still got Patricio Pitbull, you've still got Johnny Eblen, and you got Patchy Mix. I've said those three guys, they're kept in Bellator because I think the PFL officials look at those three as the faces of the brand.
Yeah, for sure. They're definitely the faces of, the entire promotion that they bought in Bellator, that they want to preserve that. They want to be able to market those guys.
Especially when they've got a fantastic deal with Max.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they have to take full advantage of whatever they can in terms of the Bellator side, for sure.
One other thing before we get into UFC 300. There's going to be a special guest, the Hammer himself, Mark Coleman. After all that he has gone through, this warms my heart that he's going to be there. Octagon side. They better show him and shower him with so much love, considering that he was one of the early day fighters.
Yeah, no, Mark Coleman being at UFC 300 couldn't be more perfect, if you ask me, honestly. I mean, a lot of people were talking about it. Max Holloway and Gaethje were talking about wanting him to wrap the BMF belt around them, and I think there's nothing more fitting at this point. I mean, like you had said it, he's a real life superhero, and it's like you said, just a heartwarming story. I mean, Mark Coleman's a legend, and he deserves to be the one wrapping the belt around one of those guys. If that's both of their wish, I don't see how the UFC doesn't grant it. And also a great job of the UFC, and very respectful to allow Coleman to be like showcased heavily at this show, because like you said, pioneer, former champion, and superhero. So no, I'm very happy with the decision for sure.
And I know we talk about this card being stacked, but I hope the celebrity and fighter guests at this card is also stacked. I
Yeah.
want to see everybody there, because I know there's the Nail brothers and such, but you know, I want all the familiar faces from older pay-per-views too, because I know Red Hot Chili Peppers always used to be at the UFC pay-per-views. Gordon Ramsay was always at the pay-per-views. Have them there. Use your TKO connection. Have one of the big WWE stars or two there.
Well,
Have
one thing I will say is the PFL just actually sent out a press release just a couple hours ago that Chuck Liddell, Roy Nelson, and Junior Dos Santos will all be at the PFL event in Las Vegas the day before. So I would have to assume
have them just walk across
I would have to assume that the next day at least the three of those guys will be there for sure. So three heavyweight legends.
Absolutely. It stinks that the relationship between Couture and the UFC is sour, because I'd love to see him there.
Yeah.
I would love to see all the old familiar faces there this is UFC 300, and they have gone. Might as well transition now, all out for this card. It is one of the best cards that we have seen on paper. We're not, however, going to go over all the fights. We're not even going to go over one or two. We're going to save that. We have a couple of extra shows that we're going to be doing this weekend. We have a UFC 300 pre-show this Saturday, April 13th. So we're talking about the early prelims start at 6 Eastern?
Yes, 6 Eastern, early prelims.
We're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours before the early prelims start. We're going to have myself, Zain, and Brett Cagle, Brett's Bets, all talking about the UFC 300 and what to expect. Brett will actually do his Brett's Bets segment live in the middle of the pre-show stream. And then you'll join us the next day at 11 a.m. Eastern as well for the post-show, for the wrap-up, talking about everything, all the fallout, and what the heck the UFC's future is going to be after what we hope is one of the greatest cards we'll ever see.
Yeah, it's really looking like it at this point, that this may be, one of the greatest cards we'll ever see, which kind of brings us into our next asking point. Is this the greatest UFC pay-per-view card on paper?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm just sitting here first, Pat, and thinking about all the milestone pay-per-views, because I think between 100 and 200 had more star power. But between 100 and 200, 100 was by far the better card. And it seems like they're taking the elements of both and placing it into UFC 300. And what's good is that it's Wednesday the 10th at the time we're recording this, and everything seems hunky-dory so far. There's nothing, too concerning. No bad reports have been coming out. The only report we've had out is, like we talked about at the top of the show, that Conor McGregor's name might get involved in this for the announcement of him and Chandler to basically be there in Vegas this weekend and do a face-off for their fight, which would probably take place at 303. So you consider that element too, and all the potential star power in the crowd, all the star power in the octagon. Like Jim Miller, 100, 200, and 300. Only fighter to ever do it.
How awesome is that, man? Seriously. How cool is it that Jim Miller will be there for all three of the 100 pay-per-views?
and he's fighting in the early prelims. The first fight of the early prelims, as it's listed right now, is Davison Figueiredo, the former flyweight champion, now at bantamweight, taking on Cody Garbrandt, the former bantamweight. How is that your opener? It has to be a stacked card for this.
And it is a stat card. I would have to 100% agree that this is definitely the greatest UFC card on paper. I know I had some friends arguing earlier this week, what's better, 200 or 300. One was they both kind of agreed that the names on 300 are better, but one was saying that the hype going into 200 was better, which it's a fair assessment, but it doesn't mean the card.
Yes. I would say yes,
Mhm.
up until the point Jon Jones ruined it.
Yes. Yes. And that's the thing. I think he kind of was considering the Jon Jones hype leading up into that card a bit, but on paper, they both agreed 300 was the best, and I have to agree too. I mean, just top to bottom, I want to see every single one of these fights. What I said to my friends was you could take the early prelims, take any 5 fights you want off the early prelims and prelims, and that's better than most main cards we've had in recent memory.
I mean,
For pay-per-view main cards that we've had in recent memory.
The only thing that really sticks out in a bad way on the pay-per-view card is the fact that Bo Nickel is going to be the opening fight against Cody Brundage. But we know the reason for that is because the UFC sees something big with Bo Nickel. And it's a fair assessment to Bo Nickel. And I mention it in my part of the MMA news predictions for UFC 300, which should release soon. You know, Bo Nickel is one of the greatest modern wrestlers to come out of one of the greatest NCAA wrestling programs in Penn State. So there's reason for that. And hopefully he does evolve. Is it still questionable to have him and Brundage on the pay-per-view? Yes, but this is the treatment that they're giving him. They put him on 2 main card pay-per-views already. They may as pay-per-view main cards already. They may as well go for this one then to go all out with it.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not a fan of it either, so please don't mistake my words when I say this, but all these fights are going to be happening anyways. You know what I mean? Whether they're on the pay-per-view, whether they're on the prelims, all the fights on UFC 300 will be happening on UFC 300. So, does the order really matter once you get into the nitty-gritty? Maybe for some people, but I'm okay with it.
Because then you could argue, you're making that the UFC is making a big deal, and the MMA media space making a big deal of Kayla Harrison signing with the UFC. She's on the TV prelims fighting Holly Holm. She's not on the pay-per-view.
Exactly. So I'm not making too big of a deal about it. I mean, all these fights are going to happen, and they're all going to be great. The order for me doesn't matter as much as the actual fights going down.
And speaking of, does this card need Conor McGregor? No.
Nope.
I actually, at first I would have said absolutely yes. At first, like when it was January and such, I was like Zain raving like yes, because you didn't get McGregor Chandler done during 2023. The only way you could have made up for it was 2024, having it in UFC 300. But I also understand the UFC side of things now, and that, we don't know what we're going to get alongside McGregor and Chandler for 303. So at the very minimum, do that to, have them there to boost that card. And we've talked about the need for a big platform for McGregor and Chandler. And at that point, it's one of 2 fights, one of 2 places. It's 300 or 303. So if we didn't know what the UFC plan was going to be for 300. They can talk about, we're going to have all the stars and everything. We're like, yeah, sure. Well,
we'll see.
They lived up to their word.
We saw, yeah. Yeah, no, they definitely delivered on all fronts.
And you know what? McGregor's still going to be there anyway if it's true that McGregor and Chandler's fight's going to be announced. So,
yeah, no, I don't see a need for McGregor on this card. I mean, it's already big enough as it is. I don't think it needed the extra star power of McGregor. Save him for an international fight week. Save him for a card that isn't going to be UFC 300. Obviously, with McGregor on this card, it would have been insane. But I don't think it was needed at all.
Here's an interesting one. So, UFC, I think this was the UFC on social media, posted a little teaser trailer, and it was a gladiator basically in the desert, which reminds people of a certain age, like myself, who grew up, when they first discovering UFC in the early to mid 2000s of the old Face the Pain intros. And there's a rumor that tease has caused a little rumor to go around that there may be a one-night return of the Face the Pain intro. And I hope it is. I know UFC 200 also had a Face the Pain intro, but if I'm not mistaken, they did like a weird remixed version of it that I didn't like.
Well, in my opinion, why make it for one night? Let's bring back the Face
Just
the
bring
Pain
it back.
intro. Just bring it back. It's so sick. I love watching the Face the Pain intros. I mean, they bring a different kind of hype, different level of like when I watch them, like it really gets me so much more excited for the card in a sense. And
And you know
I
what?
think it would be an
They
oversight.
still use stem anyways when the pay-per-view is going in and you hear that guitar riff and everything. That's an instrumental I just found out recently to another one of stem songs. So they still use them to some degree, and
Yeah, they use them in the.
they still play the intros in the pay-per-view when you're in the arena.
So it's not like they don't have them made. They have them made. They just aren't showing them us on TV. So I think,
And this is no disrespect to Ron Perlman. I love his narration, and I love what he does too.
yeah, no, I think they should just bring them back in total. But if they don't, I'm still very happy they're bringing it back for UFC 300 because it really does add just so much hype just watching that and just being like, damn, like this is what's happening. Like,
I mean,
wow.
I get what people are gonna say. Oh, you guys are stuck in the 2000s new metal age. But you know what? It's an integral part to the UFC's history. When the UFC started to take off, with UFC 40 with the Shamrock Ortiz fight. When I think that was when, or was around that time when Face the Pain kind of debuted those intros. I think it was Vendetta pay-per-view. 2005, I know my first experience watching a UFC show, I obviously was the Ultimate Fighter, but then I watched the finale live on that Saturday night, and the very first thing I bear witness to is that Gladiator, and 10-year-old me gets goosebumps like, what the hell is this? And this looks amazing. So it's such a big part of the UFC's history. You gotta bring it back at least for this night.
I completely agree. I mean, if it's not going to be brought back for permanent, I'd love to see it permanently brought back, but I doubt it happens. So I'm very happy they're bringing it back at least for one night.
I hate copyright law sometimes because I would love if our pre-show and post-show the intro was Face the Pain.
Face the Pain. Yeah. That would be sick for sure.
All right. But even though we're not going to go match by match, Pat, what match are you most looking forward to on this card?
So I got two answers for this one, right? In terms of like wanting to see the fight and like expectations for a fight, it's got to be Gaethje Holloway. Like, in just like in terms of like wanting to see a war and like wanting to see all that. But, I have an interesting pick here. Alexander Rakic versus Yuri Prohaska is a fight that very much.
I think that's a very underrated fight, honestly.
And it's crazy to me that it's not on the main card, but at the same time, I really like that fight just technically, stylistically. I think that it'll probably take place mostly on the feet, so it could be very entertaining, but I don't think it'll be as entertaining as something like Gaethje Holloway. I'm just as a fan that likes both guys so much, I just have to say that that's one that I'd probably say, yeah, that's the one I'm looking forward to most in that aspect. But in terms of just seeing an all-out war, got to go Gaethje Holloway. I mean, it's probably fighting.
I'm gonna go with Gaethje Holloway. I don't care. I don't care that it's it's the BMF belt and you can mock up the BMF belt all you want. It's Gaethje and Holloway
for 5 rounds.
Exactly. And honestly, I would take a Gaethje Holloway. I feel like as crazy as this sounds, as non-realistic as this would be, knowing the MMA structure and the UFC structure today, if they had put Gaethje and Holloway as the main event of the pay-per-view ahead of the two title fights, I still think it sells as much as it will sell this Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think that would have changed anything. If anything, maybe this is an even crazier take. I think it potentially would have sold more as the main event. Just having Gaethje and Holloway on the cover instead of Pereira Hill. I feel like those two names bring more attraction than Jamal Hill and Alex Pereira. But I think it would have sold the same regardless.
I mean, it's kind of sad to say, but my take hasn't changed from when Pereira Hill was first announced. Pereira Hill, I like that fight, and I'm interested in seeing that fight. But of the 3 title fights, and I'm including the BMF as the third title fight, Pereira Hill's the one I'm least looking forward to. My hierarchy is I'm looking forward to Gaethje and Holloway the most of the title fights. Then I'm looking forward to Whaley and Jan because I think they could put on a clinic together. And then it's Pereira versus Hill. And and the reason I like Pereira versus Hill is because I don't think that one's going to go to distance. I think the other two fights could go to distance, knowing
Okay.
the iron chins of Gaethje and Holloway and Wei Lee and Yan. Pereira versus Hill, I think somebody's going to sleep in that one.
That's probably why it's the main event, honestly, closing the night out on a banger, closing the night out on someone getting slept. And I would have to agree with you. I don't see that fight. I could see it going like into round 3, maybe. I don't see it going into
I
like
have
round
it,
4,
yeah.
round 5, like first
I
3 rounds.
I'm not going to say too much because obviously I want people to tune in, but whoever I have winning, I have winning in the third round by a finish. So,
Okay. I like that.
and what's funny is I talk about the lightweight title picture, and how that's going to be shaken up with Gaethje and Holloway. But right before Gaethje Holloway, you have the former champion Charles Oliveira taking on Arman Tsarukyan. And if Gaethje Holloway is a fight for the striking lovers, Oliveira versus Tsarukyan is a fight for the grappling lovers. Charles Oliveira and his excellent Brazilian jiu-jitsu, his excellent submission skills against the wrestling skills of Arman Tsarukyan. Like I talked about just 2 weeks ago when we were doing the triangle hosting, that fight between Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan back in St. Petersburg 2019. I loved that. I don't hate on grappling, but I do understand the concept of striking, being the better seller. But my God, those two guys showed what a great wrestling matchup can be. And I'm hoping that Oliveira and Tsarukyan, I know people are not going to want it to go onto the ground, but I'm going to take the crazy take. I want that on the ground. I want
I
to
do too.
see the craziness that could happen on the ground, all the transitions and such. It's funny.
Yeah.
We're the American crowd, might frown on that. That's the kind of fight I would want to see in like a Brazil or Japan where they recognize the small things, seeing somebody, escape guard, seeing somebody make a transition into half guard or side control, and you hear the rousing applause on that. Like
Yeah.
that's the beauty of that this matchup is going to be. I hope is that Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, and I said this for Fansided in the preview, Oliveira versus Tsarukyan needs to be, I hope, and I think it will be a performance that shows the beauty of grappling.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you. I think this will be a fight that hits the ground and probably stays there for most of it. And man, I mean, it's just the perfect mix of wrestling versus BJJ. And it's weird because you would have thought the same about Islam Charles, but that fight wasn't on the ground for as long as you might expect.
I know.
I think this one will be on the ground for a bit, and I think this is going to be very fun to see how Arman's wrestling deals with the submissions of Charles, and how Charles's submissions deal with the the wrestling of Arman. So yeah, no, I think this is a grappler's delight, you could call it.
Exactly. Best way to put it. Of course, UFC 300 is not the only card we got this weekend, though. It is the biggest, but we do have a PFL show. We do have the second stage of the first half of the PFL regular season. And where else is it taking place but in Las Vegas, as you mentioned before? You know what? Perfect marketing. I mean, we just got
I
off of
agree.
WrestleMania, and every time at WrestleMania, you see all these independent promotions. And you know what they do? They book shows for that weekend, and they do it around the city in which WrestleMania is taking place. It is the perfect thing. And if you're an MMA fan and you're in Vegas, even if you're only going to go to one and not the other, this is it is the MMA invasion of Las Vegas. You got PFL one night and UFC the next. It's fantastic.
I completely agree. I mean, I think the PFL is taking full advantage of a lot of MMA fans being out there in Las Vegas, and I think it's really awesome that they decided to host an event the night before. It's MMA fans' delight, and I think it's a really good card too, actually.
Absolutely. So, main event for that one, we're actually gonna have I believe it's gonna be the light heavyweights and the lightweights. Yep, it's gonna be light
Yeah.
heavyweight and lightweights that are gonna be on scene for Las Vegas. The main event, Intoxicated, trying to make it 2 for 2, trying to make it, start his path for a second PFL light heavyweight championship. He's gonna be taking on Alex Polizzi. I think, Pat, you'll agree, it's sad that Zain isn't here because Zain loves Impa. I love Impa too, but Zain really loves Impa. That Impa has really come up his own as a fighter at light heavyweight. And even though he lost to Eblin in the middleweight fight back in the PFL Bellator pay-per-view, Impa and him put on such a delight. It was the fight of the night for that card, and I don't think I'm going to be too concerned with him, going from a middleweight fight at the end of February to fighting here in mid-April, 20 pounds up.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I actually talked to everyone on this card today at the virtual media day, but specifically when I talked to Impa, I asked him, like, do you feel like since that Johnny Eblen fight, even though you lost, that you've been given the respect that you feel you deserve? And he really went into depth about how he has felt like he's a lot more respected now, and that, the PFL championship obviously gained him a lot of respect doing what he did, and
Right.
the fight with Johnny Eblen only solidified that and stronger that. So I was really happy to hear him say that because he does deserve his respect. I mean, he was, I hate to say it, he was a joke of the MMA world for a bit after getting knocked out by Buckley. Everyone would just post that finish and make fun of Impa, and that's all Impa was known for. So to see the turnaround he's had in his career and then him finally getting the respect he deserves is just, it's perfect for me.
Absolutely. And he's going to get tested with a Bellator veteran in Alex Belize. Although coming off of back-to-back losses, lost to Carl Moore 297, and he was a victim of Yoel Romero's early time with Bellator. He actually lost that fight in the very last second of the fight.
Yeah, got his jaw broken in the last second of that fight. It was bad injury. Bad
Yeah,
injury.
really, really bad. That broke a 3-fight win streak. So notable wins he has. He has beaten Rafael Carvalho before. He has beaten Grant Neal before. That said, facing somebody like Impa Kasaganai, who's coming in with all the momentum in the world, I'm gonna go with the guy with the momentum, and I'm gonna go with Kasaganai on this one.
I would
It-
I would definitely agree with you here that Impa will win. But one thing I will say is the betting odds for this fight were blown so out of proportion. I think Impa was up to -700 at one point, and Polizzi was at like +500, whatever it was. And since people realized that, the odds have shrunken significantly and gotten a little bit more realistic. Not to take anything away from Impa, I do think he wins, but this is 7th fight in 13 months. It's definitely worth noting that his body is not in top shape at the moment.
And I know the PFL is, as they say, the toughest competition in MMA, considering how much you have to fight. But remember something: not only is he fighting now, but he's also got to fight
2
potentially
months.
in 2 months. Yeah,
Yep.
I think if the June schedule is in my head, because I remember they did the June schedule on the broadcast of San Antonio. I think the second one in June is the 21st or 22nd, which would
Sounds
mean
about right.
which would mean, yeah, a little more than 2 months to get ready for the next fight. So hopefully Impa is rested at that time. And hopefully maybe Impa's body has gotten used to maybe there are fighters who get used to the PFL schedule pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, I mean, OAM last year, got his second championship, did that whole schedule, but, it's just Impa did have the fight in Saudi Arabia with Johnny Eblen in the middle of his championship in this fight, so he even took an extra fight on top of all of that, and he had the Challenger Series fight last year and stepped into the season on short notice, like
And I think that's why I have a little faith in him, is because he did such a thing, taking the
Mhm.
Challenger Series fight on such short notice, winning that, and then going on to win the whole thing, even against some beasts like Joshua Silveira and company.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Impa wins as long as he can, defend the takedowns, which he's shown that he can recently. I mean, Eblen did get him down. I don't know if Polizzi is the kind of wrestler that Eblen is, but I feel like Polizzi will present some problems for sure. But I like Impa here.
For sure. If this was a 5-round fight, I would go with Impa in the finish. However, since it's only going to be 3 rounds, I'm going to say Impa decision.
I have Impa decision as well.
Uh,
Polizzi
other,
has a chin of steel. Let me just say that as well. Polizzi's chin is ridiculous. So
yeah, I'd say the only, like you said, the only real damage that has happened to him is Yoel Romero basically breaking his jaw in half at the end of a fight.
yes, exactly. And he took one of the craziest flying knees I've ever seen from Jose Augusto, and just ate it on the chin and just survived. And I still don't know how he survived that knee. But to the next fight.
Yeah, the next fight, another big matchup, light heavyweight. It's going to involve Rob Wilkinson, a PFL veteran, taking on Tom Breeze. The other 2 fights I want to talk about, you know, I think are a little more worthy of the co-main event spot. No disrespect to Wilkinson or to Breeze, but it is the light heavyweight. It is the big boy. So that's why they are going to get the co-main event spot here. Rob Wilkinson, as we kind of alluded to, PFL veteran. His last fight was against Thiago Santos last year. Unfortunately, Rob Wilkinson was one of the 10 or so fighters who ended up suspended because of the whole drug testing. The whole drug testing thing that happened last year. He originally did win against Thiago Santos, though, so solid win there. He is on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would be a 6-fight win streak before the no contest. So technically a 7-fight unbeaten streak. He did win the 2022 tournament, so the competition for Impa just got nosed up a little bit, and he's taking on Tom Breeze, another veteran, actually a UFC veteran. Fought with the KSW. Actually made his debut on the PFL Europe finale card last year when he choked out Clayton Silva. So big opportunity here for Tom Breeze. His first big stage in a little while. Big opportunity for Rob Wilkinson. Try to brush off the controversy from last season, his suspension, to try and get back on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to the point there, Wilkinson was supposed to be the main event against Phil Davis when that was the fight. So I think that's why they only bumped him down one spot. They didn't want to like throw him down the card. And
Right.
this is still a pretty entertaining fight, if you ask me. I mean, you look at their records, neither man has lost very much in their pretty extended MMA careers. So I'm very interested to see how this fight goes, especially with, I mean, presumably Wilkinson not on PEDs anymore. So it's very interesting to see if we'll see a switch in Wilkinson after this, if we'll see the same Wilkinson. I think we do see a similar one, but Tom Breeze is no slouch. It is not easy to beat Tom Breeze by any means. I mean, some of his losses are to Brendan Allen, Sean Strickland, like some of the best middleweights in the world. So for sure, I think if Wilkinson can join the category of guys that have beaten Tom Breeze, it only strengthens the fact that he didn't really need the steroids and that he's just a great fighter.
And the fact that also, Pat, that you say that about Tom Breeze taking on guys like Brendan Allen and Sean Strickland, he's another case like Impa was, where I'm curious what he's going to look like. I'm familiar with his work at 185, not so much still discovering, him at 205. So it's going to be very interesting for my eyes to, I mean, I saw him during the PFL Europe card at the end of last year, but him taking on a guy like Wilkinson, who's been a PFL global champion before, what is this going to look like 20 pounds up?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting for sure. I really am interested in this fight though, because I don't think it's as easy for Wilkinson as some people are like making it out to be. But due to the short notice nature and everything, I am going to be choosing Wilkinson here.
Same reason.
And I think I'm going to be choosing a finish just because of the short notice nature, honestly, because Wilkinson just a lot of his wins are finishes. He does not win by decision very often. So
yeah, he beat originally before it was overturned. He did beat Santos by a decision, but the thing is, I'll take it one step further. I think he needs a win by a finish to put that emphatic statement of "I'm back" and to say to Impa, "Hey, I'm back for my division. I'm back for my title."
Yeah, no, I'd go Wilkinson TKO in round 2 if I had to make a prediction for this fight. But I do really think Breeze is going to make it tougher than people are seeming it's going to be.
Yeah, I'll go with the finish then. But I think Tom Breeze will last. I think it'll go third round.
Okay, yeah, no, I like that for sure. I mean, like I said, Breeze is not an easy guy to beat, so I'm actually fairly interested in how this one looks for sure.
And I don't want to bring any disrespect to these two guys, but you know how we talked about just before with Gaethje Holloway being the fight I'm most looking forward to? Well, the featured fight at lightweight is the fight that I'm most looking forward to. Clay Collard and Patricky Pitbull. I mean, my God, one of the best strikers, most popular fighters with the PFL versus one of the best grapplers and one of the most popular fighters within Bellator. Oh man, give me this and so much more.
Oh, these two guys are going to slug it out for sure. I mean, both of them at media day today seemed like they were ready to go to war with each other, like just go toe to toe and go to war. And I wouldn't expect anything less from either of these guys, honestly. I mean, Shabley fought Patricky Pitbull in his last time out. He's now fighting for the title, and Patricky sat there for all 5 rounds and went toe-to-toe with Shabley. Even though he was losing most of that fight, getting hit clean, getting hit with some big shots, he was walking forward, engaging in a war, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. These both men are just known for putting on entertainment, and I just don't see how this is a boring fight, honestly.
And I know Clay Collard got quickly submitted in his last fight at the PFL Bellator card, but he was taking on a guy. Let's see, what's his name again? Oh yeah, AJ McKee. Only one of the best guys to ever be produced exclusively within the Bellator cage up until the purchase. And I think PFL has some big plans for AJ McKee within the PFL owned Bellator organization. So I think this fight just smells of this fight just smells of fight of the night material. They're gonna slug it out. They're not. I think this one's gonna be awesome on the feet. I think they're gonna go to the ground at times, and I think it's gonna be a fun one there. With Pitbull trying to catch a submission, Collar trying to land some pretty nasty ground and pound. I'm looking forward to this one. This one is going to be close in my book. I think they're both tough enough that this one goes to a decision. Oh man.
I know it's tough. I don't know.
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go Collard, but I might take the I don't know if people this might be a cheap in some people, but I think it's gonna be that close of a fight or that controversial of an ending. I'm going with Collard with the split decision win.
Ooh, I like the specific prediction there. I'm right there with you. I don't know how to predict this fight. I don't know who's going to win. It's also interesting to note both of these guys are coming off losses. So, it's going to be interesting to see who's more hungry to get back in that win column, I guess. Maybe I'll go on the other end of that. I'll take Patricky.
Oh, you're flipping on me.
I'll take Patricky Pitbull via controversial split decision. How about that?
Okay, so we're getting some controversy here.
Yeah.
I see how it is.
Just because of how close I assume this fight will be.
Fair enough. One other fight, though, I do want to mention and give a shout out to Sabado C taking on Joshua Silveira. I think this one, these are guys that Impa had to go past in order to get the championship. So you've got Impa, Rob Wilkinson, Sabado C, and Joshua Silveira all within the same weight class, all competing against one another. Yeah, I think the competition level for Impa just got put up a little bit, but obviously C and Silveira, they're familiar. He's familiar with before. C Silveira kind of familiar with each other. Give me this fight too, because this one I'm really looking forward to. I know C had an incredible run, but if I'm Josh Silveira and I came oh so close, only falling to one of the greatest stories to come out of MMA in 2023, I'm that much hungrier, and I'm that much, we've seen Silveira's power. We know that Silveira can do some damage, and Sabado C, he's got some great skills. And Sabado C, but the concern I have is he's coming up from a weight class. It was him versus 2 weight classes. That's true. That should have said 2 weight classes to be more specific. I don't know how his body, maybe his body handles it great, but I don't know if he's ready for the kind of power that Josh Silveira can bring. So give me second or third round knockout win for Joshua Silveira.
So Silveira said that he saw Impa right before media day, and that he shook hands with him. Very cordial, very nice, and he didn't look like a 170 pounder. He said he's built up. There's been some pictures going around of C. The transformation. He looks like a 205er. He really does, but he's not used to fighting 205ers, and
Right.
I think it's going to be really tough to make the jump. Not one, but like we said, 2 weight classes here. It's a whole 35 pounds when you look at it just in weight, just in terms of the guys you're fighting. Listen, I think C is more skilled overall. I think his takedown defense is amazing. I think his striking is some of the best that there is in the PFL. But I just think the size difference of Silveira and him being used to fighting these big guys is going to be the difference here. And I'm going to take Silveira. I'm going to take Silveira by submission here, because we know that Sadabu, once he gets on the ground, not as effective as he is on the feet. And I think that Silveira is a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner. We've seen it before. So I'm going to take Silveira. I'm going to take Silveira by 3rd round sub here. Getting a little interesting.
I think that's definitely, maybe the better play. I'm just sitting here thinking, the 35-pound difference, the power
Mhm.
that Silveira has. I could see this fight going to the ground too. I just think maybe that power will be a little too much that he might not need the submission. He just might be able to hammer his way down into a TKO, into a ref stoppage.
Yeah, very possible. I just don't know if Silveira will want to stay on the feet for too long with C because his striking is, in my opinion, it's better than Silveira's. Just like his technical striking and his kicks, like it's
That's
better.
true too.
But we've seen the better guys lose because of a massive edge in power, massive edge in size, which is what I expect here, honestly.
For sure. Now, quickly, I just want to go over with you, Pat. We'll do some quick recaps, but you were there in San Antonio, so I want to get your thoughts being there in person for the PFL San Antonio card. I've seen your social media posts where you talk about, how it was really great and it was a great learning experience for you and really got to, improve your skills, stand out more on your own. And I'm very happy and very proud of you.
Thank
Uh,
you.
if you want to talk a little bit more on that, as we also talk about the main event of that San Antonio card, that I did not think that Valentin Moldavsky was going to win this fight, let alone how he dominated Ante Delija.
Yeah, no. So I was there in the arena. I know we have to run back and forth from backstage to the arena when we're covering the event, but I was there in the arena for this fight. And man, the arena lit up when Moldavsky was just pounding away at him. And I was very surprised. I got a nice video from my angle of this finish because you could kind of tell it was coming. You could tell Dalia kind of just shelled up, and Moldavsky was not going to stop teeing off on him. And it kind of came out of nowhere in a sense, but it was like it was a pretty brutal finish. And I'm with you. I didn't expect Moldavsky to win. I probably thought it was going to be maybe a close decision for Dalia or something, but no, Moldavsky just put it on Dalia early, and he couldn't recover. Man, I very much enjoyed being in the arena for this one.
Yeah. I mean, I was really shocked. It looked like Dalia, it appeared that he hurt himself. And once he hurt himself, he just was not there. It seemed like once he got a taste of Moldavsky's power and got hurt, something just clicked off in him.
Yeah, no, exactly that. I mean, backstage, Ray Sefo told us that Dalia tore his groin and that had something to do with why that happened, which would make perfect sense. It's weird because he did get kicked in the, private parts a
Mhm.
little bit before that, but I just don't know if that could necessarily cause a tear. Maybe it was a movement thing since he got kicked there. Like I really don't know, but yeah, apparently an injury for Dalia is what led to that stoppage, but man, I mean, Moldavsky capitalized when he needed to and just got him out of there. So I was very impressed by Valentin Moldavsky, who's
I mean,
he's probably the favorite after winning in the fashion that he did.
you think about how the PFL has been promoting, things are different now that Bellator has basically invaded PFL in its regular season. And I think Valentin Moldavsky is and his performance is certainly the key, is certainly, I mean, the example of that. Because think about it, he was the former interim heavyweight champion. He came up short against Bader, but he held Bellator gold, and now he has the chance to win PFL gold. What do
Yeah.
you do to make a statement? You take out the former PFL champion.
Yeah, and especially in a fashion like that. I mean, it was very, very impressive.
Maybe he gets a little revenge for Bellator too, considering Bader lost to Ferreira at the pay-per-view card.
Yeah, it would be big if a Bellator guy ended up winning the PFL heavyweight division to kind of like, stick one to Ferreira a little bit there.
Co-main event. Speaking of heavyweights, Dennis Goltsov, Linton Vassell. This one ended up in the PFL's favor, and I did predict Goltsov to win this fight. I don't think I imagined the fight being how it was. It looked like both guys gassed out pretty bad, and especially Linton Vassell. So early in the fight, he did not look like he had the stamina to be in there with Goltsov.
No, I mean, it looked like Vassell was going to finish him in the first round. He had him in an awful spot. He was in mount, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, no, he was in mount, and
Yeah.
it looked like he could have gotten the finish, and
He
then
was
it just
teeing off on him, and then first round ends, and Vassell looks like a completely different fighter for the rest of the fight. I mean, I've never seen someone gas like that extremely, if that makes sense.
the last time I've ever seen a fighter gas that extreme Probably Kimbo Slice and Dada 5,000.
Yeah, but like, it was just so crazy that like the fight went the way it did. And also, let me just say, I thought that fight should have been stopped in round 2 at some point because it was clear Vassell was not going to get up once he got brought down. And then in the 3rd round, we're sitting there for a couple minutes and we're just like, can we just get a mercy stoppage here or something? Because Vassell's just sitting there eating all these short shots and he's not getting up. He's not doing anything. He's just there eating these shots. It's like, man, like I'm happy they ended up stopping the fight, but I don't think it should have went as long as it did. It seemed like Vassell had been done from the moment they walked out in that 2nd round, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sitting there and I'm just like, like I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, throw the damn towel.
Mm-hmm. No, but seriously, I agree because it got ugly after round 1 for Vassell, sadly.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because Linton Vassell is fantastic.
And he was on a big win streak coming in too.
He was supposed to challenge Bader for the heavyweight title, got hurt, and then the PFL purchased Bellator, and he lost out on that title shot.
Yeah, I know. Very unfortunate on his end, for sure.
And this is not the good start that he needed for the PFL season.
And considering, I think it was, I want to say 4 of the heavyweights got finishes and got 4 more points.
I mean, Vassell's already looking like he's going to be on the outside looking in for the playoffs unless he gets a 1st round finish in his next fight.
And even with a 1st round finish, he'd need other guys to lose their next fight and not get a 3-point win because any of those 4 guys that got a finish, if they win, even if it's by decision,
he's out.
They're over him. Yep, they're over him.
He'd have to hope for an injury to be an alternate.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, no, it's just definitely not the start Vassell wanted for his PFL run, but I mean, he seems to be in good spirits. So that's one thing that seems good is that, he seems to be taking the loss well. So hopefully he can go out there in his next fight and get a big finish and potentially put himself right back in talks for the playoffs.
I'll give, Juliana Velasquez credit. She went the distance because obviously this was only a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight, but this one was not close. Liz Carmouche shown why she is, she was dominant against her in their 2 fights in Bellator. And the crazy thing is, she's still technically the Bellator women's flyweight champion. They haven't stripped her. Liz wanted to compete in the season. So there's a realistic chance we could have a legitimate champ between the Bellator and PFL.
Yeah, no, and that's the cool part. I mean, we were asking Liz. I wasn't the only one that asked her about what's up with her belt. And like, do you know what's going on? And she said no. She said she just wanted the chance to be in the PFL tournament, chance to win $1 million and come over here and win the belt, which you got to respect. I mean,
right. For somebody who's a veteran, she's done everything. She's been in Strikeforce, challenged for Strikeforce title. She's been with the UFC. She was Rousey's opponent in the first ever UFC women's fight. She's challenged Valentina Shevchenko before. She's a veteran, goes over to Bellator, is as dominant as she is at flyweight, ends up winning that championship. For somebody like her, let her be in the PFL season if she wants to. And they've given her that chance. Maybe she wasn't a fan at first of fighting Velasquez for a 3rd time, but you know what? She got the job done. She's got her 3 points. She wins her next fights like she's been doing. She's probably going to end up in the postseason. And there's a legitimate chance that if she ends up in the postseason, right now she is the clear favorite at women's 125 at this point. So there's a clear favorite that she is going to be the champ at the end.
I wouldn't say clear favorite because Talia Santos is in the weight class too. You definitely have to consider that. And Santos is a very, very good fighter in her own right. But I would say, yeah, she is the favorite, I guess. But it makes for so many interesting matchups if she does make the playoffs for sure. And the funny part is, I said this to Liz after the fight. You're 3-0 against Juliana, and you beat her in all 3 different methods: TKO, submission, and decision. I was like, "Do you really have anything more to prove against her?" And she's like, "Yeah, no, I don't think there's anything more I can prove against her." I mean, how can you? I mean, this was a 30-27 across the board, if I'm not mistaken?
I think so.
How do you TKO someone, submit someone, and then beat them 30-27, and then like there's no question you are the better fighter.
Well, just imagine if Velasquez wins her next fight and then an injury happens and she ends up getting into the postseason. And it just so happens that the seed ends up being the one against If I were either fighter, I'd be like, oh, come on.
Oh, I'd be so upset if I was either fighter. Like, come on. I mean, Liz, if you're Liz, I mean, I guess you're okay with it because you know you can beat her and just move on in the playoffs. But if you're Juliana, you're kind of like,
maybe if that happens, Liz should ask PFL for some sort of gimmick. Do the one arm
Yeah.
tied behind my back thing. Or
no, if something like that were to happen, though, I feel like they'd have to switch matchups or something. Like, come on, 4 times with these two, like, Liz 3-0, like it just doesn't make
I
sense.
was gonna say, it's not like one has managed to get a victory. I mean, the only time I've ever seen somebody win the quadrilogy fight, after going 0-3, is Real Adesanya in his two-sport rivalry with Alex Pereira.
And that's the thing, that's a two-sport rivalry, so you can't even technically count the first two as MMA. So yeah, no, I completely agree.
One last thing, Brendan Allen, Chris Curtis, talk about it. I mean, absolutely fun fight, wild fight. Both men managed to hurt each other. Both men managed to land shots on each other. Battle for controls in the clinch. This was fantastic. I said last week that this was perfect matchmaking, right? Well, they showed why this was perfect matchmaking even on such short notice. And hats off to both men. Chris Curtis may have suffered a torn ligament, I believe, after as a result.
Torn hamstring.
Hamstring,
Yeah.
right. So I'm hoping for the best for him.
Brendan
Allen, though, he gets his revenge, and he's showing why he's one of the best up and comers at the middleweight division. And maybe that fight with Marvin Vettori happens next. Because it seems like those two are bickering so much. Vettori tweeted something out at him. Strickland tweeted something out at him. And Allen went off on Vettori during the post-fight press conference. I've got a feeling that those two have to be matched up next.
I would 100% agree that they just have to book the fight, that they originally had planned. It would make too much sense to me, if you want my honesty. So, and I know there was some controversy with the scorecards here, which was reflected in the split decision.
It's a little controversial of a split decision, but I mean, it was a competitive fight.
I know a lot of people didn't like the 49-46 scorecard, especially for Allen. I know a lot of people thought Curtis won at least 2 of those rounds. And it sucks because it seems like Curtis might have screwed himself over. Not screwed himself over, but the injury might have screwed him over in the end of that 5th round, because I'm pretty sure if he took the 5th round on all 3 scorecards, he would have gotten the split decision. So it is a shame that the injury kind of hindered the judge's eyes in that last round, and that might be what led to Brendan Allen getting the decision. So I do feel bad for Curtis again, because I thought he was kind of not robbed,
he is the victim. He is the victim of multiple decisions between his time in UFC and even before that, and his time with PFL and everything.
And the headbutt against Kelvin Gastelum recently that kind of changed the complexion of the fight. And you know what I mean? Like, he just seems to get so unlucky with these crazy circumstances and stuff that
he is the bad luck Brian of middleweights in MMA.
That's to put it lightly, yes. So no, I kind of do. I do feel for Curtis a bit here, just with him losing this fight, but seemed like a close fight. I didn't get to watch every second of it.
It was a hell of a fight. I can't say it better. It deserved its fight and eye honor. So at least both of them walked away with $50,000 extra in their pocket. So can't complain about that.
No.
One last time, by the way, pre-show for UFC 300, Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Yes, we are going to break down every single fight. We will start at the top. We will work our way to the bottom. Maybe we'll do it the other way around if Zan wants to make things a little different. I don't know. Brett Cagle will be there. He will do his Brett's Bets live right there on stream, so you'll get it right there as we're in the middle of talking. And then the post show, which Pat, you'll join us for Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. So a lot coming on with the MMA Outsiders. It's the big weekend we've all been waiting for.
Said it best, Tom. I mean, we've all been waiting for this weekend. It's finally here, guys. Let's go. UFC 300. Let's get hype.
Of course, don't forget the PFL card in Vegas the night before. Don't forget our live stream tonight for the NBA, where we've got Bulls, Pistons, and we've got Knicks, Celtics as the NBA season's coming to a close. Our first official live stream on Playack, the new partners with Empty the Bench. So shout out to them once again for all that they're doing, and here's to a fantastic partnership. until next time. By the way, make sure to check out in the near future. We talked about earlier in the show, Pat, San, and I might be doing some NFL stuff right before the NFL draft. But if Conor Chandler 303 is going to be made official, maybe in the lead up to 303, we might be doing some special stuff with Playback with some classics. So stay tuned for that.
All right,
Until
stay tuned,
then,
everyone.
make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Follow the show on social media at MMA Outsiders, ETB, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Make sure to do the same for the Empty the Bench Network itself, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. Subscribe to the YouTube page, youtube.com/ETB Network, 720 plus subscribers and continuing to climb. With me, producer Pat Danna, Combat Sports UK journalist. Thank you for Pat for doing the emergency fill-in, pulling the Chris Curtis, essentially. Albano, contributor MMA News, Fansided MMA, and with the PFL website. So I will be there, and I will be writing the results for the PFL website for the PFL Vegas card, and then right into the next night for UFC 300. Follow Pat on social media at Pat Danna MMA. Follow me on social media at Thomas J. Albano. Follow Zain on social media at Zain Bando 99. It seems like he will be there for the Playback stream. He will be there for the pre and post fight show. Hopefully his voice is recovered well enough. And hopefully next week, Zain will be back with me for episode 80 of the MMA Outsiders, where we will do all of the aftermath for UFC 300. Plus, next week, April 20th, we got a big boxing fight with Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia that we got to talk about.
Can't believe that's still on. But yes, next week.
All right. Also, don't forget to go to etvpodcast.com for more information about the network, blogs from some of our contributors. Those blogs are coming out pumping, man. Shout out to all the blogs people, you yourself included. And don't forget, of course, the MMA Outsiders presented by Playback. Shout out to them, as I mentioned before. And don't forget to take the MMA Outsiders on the road with you wherever you get your podcasts. So Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the audio-only platforms, and so much more. All right, for Pat, I'm Tom. Happy UFC 300 weekend, everybody. And we will see you next week for episode 80 of the MMA Outsiders. Good night,
See you all next week.